Minister, you mentioned that there's not enough supervisory capacity in this field. I just want to give you accolades to say that you actually used evidence-based policy. You used evidence to make that statement, Minister, because in here we have, sorry Thabo, I'm going to expose you, my colleague Thabo Manyaka, who actually has done several studies. The past one passed with cum laude, and I actually, he's studying another one now, and I said, Thabo, I have got an interesting topic for you to unpack for us. We've done an economic modeling to understand what is it that we need in terms of rent money to get to this 1.5% of jet to GDP by 2030. However, we are not able to say how and the when and the who must do in getting there. And I said, I've got a nice topic for you, Thabo, for your next studies. And he said, no, actually, I've submitted similar, something like that, on how we can improve our jet to GDP, but it was actually declined because there's not supervisors in those fields in the higher education. So I think maybe something to be taken up. Another last one on the breaking of the ice. I think, Minister, you said that you need to close that booming industry of people writing for others their thesis. I was just asking that before you close it, I'm looking at the panelists here, my distinguished panelists. Everywhere there's a doctor before them, and a prof. I'm feeling, yeah. So I was saying before you close. You close it, Minister. Maybe I'll talk to them in the corner there. You won't know how we did it, but yeah. All right, now back to the reality on the question that I've been asked about what are the reforms that we can put to pivot the NSI. So I'll focus on two branches on this topic. There are main reforms that we need to think about. There are also sub-reforms, like sectoral, you can call it sub or sectoral reforms that are required, and some of the colleagues have actually mentioned here in the panel. The first one, that is the branch on the main reforms. There are currently 3 reforms that are happening in government. The first one is the reform around the gender. I'm sure you've all heard of it, on how we need to respond to gender issues, women and youth inclusion in all our interventions that we do. And the second one is about the climate change. If it hasn't come to you as a department, it is on its way. The third one, which is us now, is about STI, which is Science, Technology and Innovation Reform. Minister, we were able to actually highlight this as part of the main highlights, reforms in terms of the planning and budgeting frameworks of government, working together with the National Treasury and the DPME. Now, maybe let me focus on the STI because that's our bloodline, right? Let's forget a bit about the 2 others. So how we managed to do this, Minister, is that we actually had the task team that has been formulated between the National Treasury and the DPME and ourselves as a DSTI. And we are using the STI priorities as outlined in the STI decadal plan to entrench them into the STI intensive government departments, knowing very well that we cannot work in silo, we need to work with the government and the whole of government. All spheres of government, including the provincial minister. So that's how we are doing it and the task team is actually supporting us very well. And once that is done, we are actually entrenching these priorities to feed into the 5-year plans, strategic plans, and the APPs. I won't talk about the operational plans. And then, once that is done, we are not going to be police, but we want to talk to the AOG and the National Treasury to see how those priorities, the money is following those priorities. Because we realize that sometimes money is shifted and money is not used for its intended purpose. So that's how we are doing it currently, and we are moving very well on that. And we are also not just doing that, we actually assess, who formed part of the DPME guideline assessment committee, where we are assessing this department if indeed the SI priorities are actually entrenched into this, so that we are adopting a whole government approach. Now, what is the future? What are we looking for in the future? Yes, we are doing all this, it's moving the needle, but it's not enough. What is the future that you are looking for? is that we need to move to more like a mission-orientated funding using this model of the SCI budget coordination. And how do we do that? An example of that is that, for instance, if we are trying to solve a problem for this country that is around climate innovation, that involves climate innovation program, we need to see what will be the role of DSTI, whether it's research funding, what will be the role of environmental department, whether it's policy regulatory, the role of energy, whether it's all about technology deployment. And most importantly, the industry. How do they come in terms of commercialization aspects of the project? So we need to see that future. And another thing that we also want to see that we have not yet reached, we are doing a lot on, but we still need to do a lot, Minister, is that now people are talking about not the triple helix, not the quadruple helix, but I hope I spell it correctly, quintuple helix. English is not my mother tongue, so forgive me. So that's why we talk about the role of education, economy, the civil society. The interesting thing is the nature, the environment that has been included in, that we need to think. We need to see that coming together, and that's how we see that STI priorities are entrenched into a whole government approach. And Minister, you said it ends science until it affects our society positively. So that's the future we are looking to. So what is our ask in terms of this main reform, which is science, technology, and innovation? Minister, I would like to see this implementation really working. We would like to see setting up of STI desks within the national departments, similar to the gender desk that are being set up and departments are funding. So we want departments to also deliberately fund STI, whether it will be visual offices or visual desk offices. Now that we are going digital and we are moving with the world, but we need those desks to be set up. We also need a STI intensive department to set aside appropriate percentage towards STI. I think Dr. Dlamini talked about the certain percent for commercialization with, I think, DTIC. So we are saying the entire value chain, not just commercialization. So we'll include you in our plans, Dr. Dlamini. And hopefully the SCI Act that the DSCI is working on will also be able to help us with that. And the other trench, which is the second one, and I said I'm dealing with reforms in two trench. The other trench, or at a sub-level or sectoral level, we need to look into funding and incentives system, wherein we bring in, moving from silo funding mentality to mission-orientated. The other interesting one, and I think that has been deliberated a lot here, Chair, was the education and skills reform. And it has been a talk of bringing in the STEM plus the innovation skills from early childhood beginning. We also need to think about how do we bring in the interdisciplinary learning into our school system, bringing in the science, entrepreneurs, and the policy think tanks together. Most importantly, we need to align our university research with our industry and societal challenges. One thing that Brazil has got this right is this aspect. They've got an institution called SESI and SENAI. SESI and as in SESI Khomotso. SESI, right? You can Google it. It has got this right where it makes sure that what is coming out of our education system is actually aligned to the industry and, most importantly, solving our societal needs. We also need to support our SMMEs. We need to support our black companies, our startup companies, and work very closely with other departments who are actually playing a bigger role in this. And for us to do this other work of the DSI, we are forging collaborative agreements with various departments. And not just that, but we also talk about the work program, where we agree on interventions that will be implemented. And we also follow the money. I said we are not police, but we follow the money. They must also talk about the co-funding of that intervention. As I conclude on this question, we're also working very hard bringing in SMMEs into the instruments that you are offering as government. And I'll make an example of our tax incentive program that we're running as a DSTI with SARS and National Treasury, that our plan is actually to work with historically disadvantaged universities, because we realize that's where SMMEs meet to access research facilities. So we need to hang in there and see how we can get them.
Dr. Mthethwa, the white paper of science and technology, it mandates that innovation must improve the quality of life of our people. However, the STI indicator report shows that 77% of households are digitally disadvantaged. They don't have access to the internet nor computing devices. We measure the system using the traditional indicators, patents, publications, etc. As someone who works with communities and grassroots innovations, what else do you think we should measure to ensure that we know whether innovation is actually reaching and improving the lives of ordinary citizens? In other words, do we have the right measures for inclusive innovation? Please, if you can briefly share your thoughts on that.
Thank you so much, Program Director. I will start by agreeing with the Minister that we lack and we are behind when it comes to inclusivity. As Memeza just a bit, we are the company that introduced the first public alarm system in South Africa that connects to the police and everyone on the ground, including CPF and the community itself. When we come to measurements, there are very few inclusive innovations like Memeza that have been commercialized at scale, which means our ability to measure real impact is limited. Inclusive innovation includes your social innovation, grassroots innovation, impact innovation, dealing with gender-based violence, potholes, leaking pipes, and most of those lie within this social enterprise or the non-profit organization sector. They are meant to solve social issues in low-income areas. And 90% of the time, the commercialization of such entities lies within government procuring the solutions or CSI giving budgets to solve those social issues. If we are honest, we are often measuring what is easy to count. We are measuring for-profit innovations. We are measuring the bottom line. We are measuring patents, publications, and R&D spend. That's what we measure, rather than what actually changes people's lives. We should be asking, is a woman now feeling safer? We should be asking, is a rural school now have access to water and proper toilets? We need to expand measuring to include social equity, social return on investment, community level economic impact, access to services, improved service delivery, and of course, dignity restored. For example, at Memeza, for the past 7 years, we have spent 50 million paying community-based stipends for community-based job creation. We have created about 6,000 community-based jobs. We have directly supported local economies, SMEs in those communities. Women feel safer, safer communities. SAPs can now reach a victim in 7 minutes instead of the average 45 minutes that we know. These are real impact outcomes, but these are not consistently reflected in what we currently measure, and that's the problem. We cannot measure what we did not implement. So we have to go back to, are we really implementing social innovations or inclusive innovations? No, not really. We are not.